Joe Biden has had a rose-colored view of the Chinese communists going back to his earliest days as United States Senator in the 1970s. As recently as just a couple years ago on the campaign trail, he was saying that Chinese communists are not bad people, that they can be our friends and our partners, that they're not really competition for us. In reality, they are maybe the most severe threat we have ever faced, even more so than Soviet Russia in the Cold War.
So China is warning that its troops remain on high alert and ready to thwart any provocation at any time after the United States sails 2 warships through the Taiwan Strait for the first time since House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan.
U.S. Navy standing by the move, saying it demonstrates the United States' commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. Gordon Chang, senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute and author of The Coming Collapse of China, joins us now. Gordon, good on us. I mean, I think we did what we had to do, but should Biden be doing more to send a signal to China that they are not in charge of international waters?
Absolutely. You know, if the United States has had one consistent foreign policy from the founding of our republic, Todd, it has been the defense of the global commons. And we need to do more of this because China is claiming that the Taiwan Strait, where this sailing took place, and the South China Sea and the East China Sea and the Yellow Sea, they say the sovereign Chinese water. Well, the United States needs to sail, fly, and operate wherever international law allows, and we need to show the Chinese that, and we need to do more of it.
Gordon, I want to go back to what we heard Senator Tom Cotton say at the beginning of this, with Biden previously saying that China was our friend, and he called them potential partners. Cotton said China is actually a bigger threat than Russia. What do you make of that statement?
The senator is obviously correct. China poses a much more grave danger to the United States than the Soviet Union did. After all, you know, China, we don't know where the coronavirus came from, but we know that the Chinese leaders deliberately released it beyond their borders once it got out into Chinese society. That's what, 1,044,000 Americans that have been killed by a disease which should have never come to our shores. We know the Chinese are behind the fentanyl gangs that kills 100,000 Americans each year. All of these deaths are murders, and the United States doesn't seem to really care under Joe Biden. The president of the United States has had, 7 conversations now with Xi Jinping as president, and he's never raised the issue of COVID-19 origins. He doesn't talk about fentanyl. This is really an abrogation of his highest constitutional obligation, which is to defend the American people from foreign attack.
And beyond that, there actually seems to be some bipartisan consensus that China is the bad guy here, yet the Biden administration is absolutely silent on this. Meantime, U.S. Coast Guard cutter Oliver Henry denied entry into the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific, raising concerns, of course, about China's growing influence there. Explain to us, Gordon, why this is such a big deal.
This is a big deal because the Solomon Islands has a prime minister who wants to take it from a democracy to basically a totalitarian state with China's backing. He doesn't really care. So Solomon Islands is going to become the world's next Zimbabwe because Sagavre, the prime minister, is acting just like Robert Mugabe. Also, China's taking over the Pacific. And if China gets away with the Solomon Islands, then the rest of the Pacific is going to pretty much become a Red Sea. And just to give you an example, in Kiribati, which is the next door neighbor to Hawaii, China looks like it's going to take over, build and improve an airstrip there, and basically put Hawaii at risk. So this has been neglectful U.S. policy for decades. It's been misguided. We need to have a policy. You know, we defend Afghanistan, we defend all these places around the world, but our next door neighbors are turning communist.
Gordon, you talked about it putting Hawaii at risk, but what does a military presence in the Solomon Islands do for a national security standpoint with the rest of the world? What does that future look like?
That is a direct threat to Australia because the Solomons are very close to there. Remember, this is the site of Guadalcanal, the famous 1943 World War II battle, where it was basically the beginning of America's offensive against the Japanese Empire. Americans died there. When Wendy Sherman, the Deputy Secretary of State, went there about a couple weeks ago for the commemoration of that, Sagavre, the prime minister, refused to show up. So basically, if we lose the Solomon Islands, even though the Solomons are quite far from the U.S., we could very well lose the rest of the Pacific in short order. That's what's at stake here.
You mentioned the leader of the Solomon Islands, the office of the prime minister, basically saying, look, this is about improving people's lives, roads, bridges, wharves, airports, not to build a military base. To me, that sounds like they're being awfully naive when it comes to what China is ultimately trying to do. And that's why we have Gordon Chang to explain what they're trying to do. Gordon, thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.